All right, folks, MJ here, and welcome back to MJ on Crime. Today, we're exploring one of the most infamous cases in American true crime, Dennis Rader, the so-called BTK killer. If you grew up anywhere near Wichita in the 70s or 80s, that name probably still sends a chill down your spine. BTK, bind, torture, kill. That was his signature, and he made sure everyone knew it. 10 murders spanning from 1974 to 1991, and the guy just vanished, or so it seemed. What always struck me about Rader wasn't just the brutality, but the way he craved attention. He wanted the world to know he was out there, smarter than the cops, taunting the press, sending letters. It's like he needed the spotlight as much as he needed control. Reminds me of a case I worked, different scale of crime, but same ego. Guy couldn't help but brag. We even caught him on a wiretap talking to himself about how smart he was and how he was getting away with his crimes. Believe that? Having a conversation with himself about his crimes. That was just one of the things that got him caught. Needless to say, there were a few chuckles when the tape was played in court. Sometimes the need to be seen or heard is a criminal's biggest weakness. Now, let's talk about those letters. Rader's communications were something else. Crazy rants, long, rambling, almost like he was writing a twisted novel. He'd use these weird narrative structures. And there was this thing he did, experts call it ironic repetition. Like he'd repeat the same verb in back-to-back sentences, almost mocking the reader. It's not something you see every day. And it gave the linguists, experts, a lot to chew on. They must have read all this and thought, man, the cheese slid off this guy's cracker. And then there were the poems. He'd parody old folk songs like Oh, Death to Nancy. Never heard that one myself, but he was turning these songs into these dark, self-aggrandizing messages. It wasn't just about scaring people. It was about crafting a persona and controlling the narrative. Makes you wonder how much of this was about the crimes and how much was about being the author of his legend. I feel he wanted to be thought of more as a legend than a killer. I mean, we've talked before about how killers use language to manipulate. Think back to our episode on informants, where words can be weapons or shields. With BTK, every letter was a power play. He wanted to be the narrator, not just the villain. But here's where it gets interesting. Technology finally tripped him up. In 2005, after years of silence, Rader sent a floppy disk to a TV station. He actually asked the cops if it could be traced, and they told him, nah, you're good, which I gotta say is a wild move on both sides. It turns out that the disk had a deleted Word document with metadata, last modified by Dennis at Christ Lutheran Church. That's all it took. Investigators connected the dots, found out Rader was the church council president, and the rest is history. It's a perfect example of how the tiniest digital clue can crack a case wide open. Now, let's not forget the old school stuff, handwriting analysis. Forensic graphologists looked at BTK's notes and spotted abrupt changes in style, enormous flourishes, and signs of grandiosity. All classic markers you see in certain personality types, especially the ones who think they're untouchable. The FBI's behavioral profiles lined up with what the handwriting showed. Narcissism, need for control, all that. Any one detail is not foolproof, but when you stack it all together with the linguistic and digital evidence, it paints a pretty clear picture. I recall a case or two in the past, I'm sure you have heard of such instances too, where police nearly fell for something like a ransom note. The bad guy tried to disguise his handwriting, but there were subtle clues, such as how he dotted his I's or the way he looped his G's. It's amazing what an expert can find because they know where to look. In this example, the bad guys attempted to disguise their writing, which gave them away. To say that with BTK it was a bit more challenging is an understatement, to say the least. So, how did they finally bring Rader down? It wasn't just one thing. It was the whole toolkit: forensic linguistics, digital forensics, and handwriting analysis, all working together. Each piece on its own might not have been enough, but together they closed the net, made the case. Makes you wonder if BTK had started his spree today with all the tech we've got now, would he have lasted as long? I'm not so sure. With the development of AI, today's immense oceans of data and instant digital footprints, maybe he'd have been caught after the first letter, or perhaps he'd have found new ways to hide, keeping up with the times. Hard to say. What the BTK case once again demonstrates is how the tools of the trade continue to evolve. We've gone from fingerprint powder and tape to DNA to digital breadcrumbs, linguistic profiling, and AI. But at the end of the day, it's still about people, talented and tenacious investigators, forensic scientists, and technicians. Also, it's about the criminals' motivations, the mistakes they make, and how investigators piece together the puzzle. All right, that's it for today, folks. I hope you enjoyed the look into BTK. If you're as fascinated by the intersection of ego, language, and technology as I am, stick around. There's plenty more to come. Until next time, stay curious, stay safe, and remember, every crime has a story. My mission, tell it. See you soon.